big comedians. He's had HBO specials, Netflix specials.
I'm sure if I saw his face, I'd know exactly who you're talking about.
Redhead, tall redhead.
Okay, yeah, okay. So, no, okay. So was the episode good?
I'm halfway through it. It's pretty good. Yeah.
Okay, all right. We're
Yeah,
rambling
they're
here.
talking about golf and pool, darts,
Okay,
smoking darts,
smoking darts, shooting darts.
smoking darts, and shooting darts.
What's going on, everyone? Thanks for joining us on our latest episode of the Retic Lounge. Again, thank you so much for all the support that you guys have given. We got a good episode for you guys today. There's been a lot of talk. Trying to talk here. A lot of talk in the Retic community in regards to size expectations. We're going to be covering size expectations for Mainland as well as for the dwarf and super dwarf stuff as well that you guys see out there, and just give our 2 cents in regards to what to look out for, and just to have realistic expectations. So before we jump into that, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment if you are watching this on YouTube. And again, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, thank you so much for the support on those platforms. Go ahead and like and follow on that. And Nathan, talk about our Patreon, talk about US ARC, hit it.
Yeah, so join us over on our lounge over at patreon.com/the Retic Lounge. We have about 42 members and growing, and an awesome Discord. So join us. We have a lot of behind the scenes access. We have Patreon meetings every other week, and just really cool content being uploaded there. So make sure you're not missing out on that. And then as well, make sure that you're a member of US ARC. They have a couple of alerts out right now. So make sure you're taking the actions necessary, and then just support them in numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to kind of just jump into this. And I think what we should really start off first is talking about size expectations. And let's focus on mainlands and like larger locality animals and talk about that, because I think there's a lot to be said about the mainland localities in regards to size, because there's a couple things that I hear a lot about in the community, misleading in size. And then also, I don't know. I mean, I'll just start off. I hear a lot of people talking about Mainlands and they're like, oh, Mainlands, they get 18 to 20 feet. With that statement right there, Nathan, what are your thoughts?
So yeah, my experience is limited, but with resources like Weston Werner over at Wildfire, and Richard Bilbo, who also keeps some mainland stuff, I've been able to have some experiences with some mainland animals, and you know, I've never seen like any of the true monsters. I know that's more of an outlier for most of these people's collections. And obviously, if you're keeping mainlands and that's something that you're prideful about, then you're gonna want that monster in your collection, right? Like,
Yeah. I mean,
but I mean, for the most part, you see them for the females getting like 14 to 16 foot, and if you're keeping a reticulated python healthy, it's going to be lean, not super fat and overweight. So, I mean, big animals, but not giant animals.
yeah. The whole like, you Google on, I was going to say you Google on Google. Clearly, you go on Google and you search like reticulated python size, and you'll find a bunch of stuff that say like 24 feet, 30 feet, right? And don't get me wrong, reticulated pythons are the longest species of snake in the world. Arguably, some people say that anacondas can be longer. I don't know, but retics, I think, take the king on longest snake in the world. So, you know, are there monster retics? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Like, especially like the thing is that we're seeing monster retics in the US starting to fade away, and it's happening less and less and less. And I don't
Well,
know.
do you think part of that is captive breeding?
Absolutely. And I was actually going to say that. I've talked to a lot of mainland keepers and people who've been doing this for a while. And as we continue to, so something that the Superdorf community, or at least locality people like myself, that really try to focus in on is not inbreeding a bunch, right? We want to try to crossbreed out to different bloodlines and in different unrelated animals in order to keep. I had a light go out, but I don't know which one. Anyways, and
You're
so
looking beautiful still. Keep going.
thanks. So, you know, early in the 90s into the 2000s, 2010s, and now we're here still in the 2020s. Mainland keepers and breeders at the time weren't concerned about that. They were pushing the morph market because that was the craze back then. Everyone was doing it, and they were just trying to make supers of things, and they were trying to breed things in order to make new combinations. And so mainlands in general have been inbred um, time and time again. And I think we're just losing, we're maybe it's the feeding regiment. And again, this is all speculation. Okay. So maybe it's the feeding regiment that's changed. Maybe it's smaller enclosures that they're not getting the opportunity to fully stretched out and get as much as exercise as they need to get the metabolism going to grow in length. Again, speculation. But the reality of it is that I don't know. In my opinion, there's probably less than 10, 20-foot retics in this country right now. They're not the monsters that everyone they definitely are big. Like, don't get me wrong, a 16-foot retic, especially a mainland or a mainland locality, is a massive snake. And one big difference between a like super dwarf cross or a super dwarf and a mainland is the body composition and the body mass. A 10-foot super dwarf is about 15 to 20 pounds. A 10-foot mainland can be 50 pounds and still not be an overweight animal. Body
Yeah.
composition is very different between the two of them. And so that's where I think a lot of the differences between the super dwarf species and the mainland species come from. But there are still some really big bloodlines out there. There are pure Sulawesi's out there that have been produced that are getting into the 16, 18-foot range. Um, People still have the big bloodlines, but they are few and far and in between. And I agree with Nathan. Probably the majority of the mainlands you're going to see for females by the time that they're 15 years old or so are probably going to be 14 to 16 feet. Um, and I don't know. I see some people that have like 6 to 8 year old males that are still 10 to 12 feet. Um,
Hmm.
and whether, and again, this is not from, I don't have experience with doing this, whether that's maintenance feeding, whether that's keeping them nice and lean intentionally to not have an obese snake. But, in general, mainlands, that range of 12 to 16 feet. But again, I think people think 12 foot and don't think of a big snake, but you got to think about body composition, right? It's a lot heavier than
Yeah.
your 12-foot super dwarf cross.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, add another 20, 30 pounds and you're talking a whole different animal. But
Also, I
that's
just,
a big reason why I keep what I keep, you know?
yeah, I wanted to throw one more comment out there. Because there's a lot of people that post on social media platforms like, here's my 18-foot reticulated python, and clearly it's like a 15-foot reticulated python. Um, and here's the difference: like, once that snake hits 15 feet in the mainland world, again, not talking from experience, but talking to people who have more experience than me and Nathan combined, the jump from 15 feet to 16 feet in terms of weight, muscle, power is massive. We're talking about only a 12-inch difference, but the weight difference and the muscle and the strength difference between like a 15-foot retic and a 16-foot retic, or a 16-foot retic and an 18-foot retic, we're only thinking 2 feet, but that is a massive difference when it comes to handling that snake.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're talking about needing a few people on hand.
Yeah. So I guess to kind of sum up the mainland part of this discussion,
Just because we can't add a whole lot being
yeah, we're not
we're not
mainland keepers.
yeah, we're not mainland keepers at all.
I have one mainland in my collection, right? No, two, but one of them's technically not mine. And
And
so
I'm planning to possibly play around with some mainland stuff, but it's just to
anthrax.
add shut up. But no, I mean it's all planning to work it smaller.
Get blah, 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 blah. Get an anthrax.
I need to get a facility and some employees if
A
I'm to
facility.
do it. Oh, for the anthrax?
Dude, I said
Well,
get an anthrax.
get yeah, sorry. My mind was just in
What
other places,
what
but
did you
no.
think I said?
I thought you were gonna say no. Just dive in, get some mainlands, and I'm like,
No, no,
no,
no, no, no.
Lucas,
Don't do that.
no.
Um,
But
before
it's a possibility. It's a possibility.
So
Shut up.
before we jump into the Dwarf and Super Dwarf stuff, real quick, want to give you a word from our sponsor. Yeah. Whether you're just getting into retics or you've been breeding for years, the first place you want to visit is Stewart Design. More and more breeders keep showing up at shows, on Morph Market, and all over socials. Sometimes it may feel impossible to get anyone's attention. Stewart Design helps small businesses like yours do big things through brand clarity, helping entrepreneurs to start and scale businesses that are easy to know and love. Their work can help any company or industry, but they've done a ton of work for ours. Stewart Design created the brand for US Arcs, Canova, Reach Out Reptiles, Coiled, and dozens of other well known reptile breeders. Like many of us, the owner of Stewart Design, Blake, is a keeper and breeder who fell in love with retics. Although Stewart Design does a lot of corporate work, Blake has a passion for working with people in the reptile industry. So, wondering if Stewart Design is right for you? Stewart Design can help if you're just getting started or you're ready to take things to the next level. Maybe you're struggling to stand out and build your presence online or at shows. And maybe you don't want to be like the other guys or get lost in the crowd. You want to make your own way doing what you love. You might just have a big idea and know your business is special, but you need help sharing it with the reptile community. If something here resonates with you, reach out to Blake. Have a conversation with him. To learn more or get started, visit sdidentity.com or call them at 855 SD Logos. Clear brand, own markets, Stewart Design helps create them.
As well, make sure that you're visiting VivTechProducts.com and using our affiliate code for 15% off. Retic Lounge 23 is the code. Again, that's VivTechProducts.com. This is our second episode with this affiliate link, so make sure you guys are taking advantage of it. One more time, it's VivTechProducts.com and use our affiliate code Retic Lounge 23 for 15% off.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys want to improve the mental health and the physical health of your retics, go ahead and use VivTech products. All right, let's jump into the. I almost said UVB. Let's jump into the Super Dwarf and the Dwarf. Size expectations, reigns, all that kind of stuff. This is a very heated topic right now in terms. There's been a lot of people misled that kind of think that these animals stay much smaller than they really do. But then also, there are some of these animals that stay pretty small. And so, Nathan, kind of just start off that discussion.
Yeah, so it's hard because I think when you start talking about these dwarf and super dwarf crosses, you have to take in so many factors. How legitimate the bloodlines you're working with are, percentages of everything,
What do you
and
mean by
then you're
bloodline?
talking. So bloodline, that's what I was going to get into next, is just uh, generations of these animals and being able to track siblings of these animals, that kind of thing. Just trying to get a decent uh, barometer of what size this animal could potentially reach.
Right.
So in the dwarf super dwarf game, it's pretty muddy, honestly, because I've seen 62.5% Kalatoa animals that get huge, get, 13 foot. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just hard when you start mixing in really big crosses because it depends on how the breedings were done. Was it a
Right.
super dwarf male taken to a mainland female? Was it a mainland female? Or, sorry, was it a mainland male taken to a super dwarf female? It's going to drastically change the outcome of that production.
Yeah. There's that one school of thought that tends to think that, like, the female size definitely outweighs and has an advantage into what the size of the animal's in. But there are some people who also say that, there's not much scientific evidence to say that, even though there's like a study out there in regards to ligers, like lion and tigers, there's this assimilation, and there's a study out there that showed that, when you take a female lion to a male tiger, which, by the way, if you don't know, tigers are much bigger than lions. So there's a study out there that shows that if you take a tiger male to a lion female, the ligers end up smaller, or if you do it vice versa. Now, there isn't that type of empirical studies that suggest that on reptiles. So again, oftentimes we find in this community, oh, there goes the other light. I don't know what turned on, but there goes in the reptile community and in reptile science. Typically, keepers sometimes are ahead of science in the sense of like we've been able to identify and see differences in, for example, reticulated python locality, right? Science is way behind on reclassifying a lot of these subspecies of these different localities out there. And so it might be that science is behind and we're more fast forward, but again, there's no full evidence to support that, but there are two school of thoughts in regards to that. I'm sorry if that sounded really sloppy. Been a long day. So just to sum up, you have people that do believe that if the female is smaller, it can impact the total outcome of the size of the offsprings as adult. And there's people that say no, just because the female's smaller and lays smaller eggs, there's still genetic potential from both sides.
I think I see a little bit of both sides. I'm only, technically one season into breeding animals and then working towards my second. But
This is no, don't cut
even
yourself
within my
short.
first, no, I'm
This is your
saying
third.
within my first, what?
This is your third season.
No.
The second season, none of your females cycled, but you still went through the process.
Well, they cycled the male. The male was too young.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So this third season, however Lucas wants to say it, I'm just saying the animals, even just within that first clutch, I think there's a lot of variability. Not drastic, we're not seeing animals that are double the size or anything like that, but there's definitely some animals that are just a little bit bigger than some of the animals I've kept.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so, man, size is one of those things in the Superdorf community that's pretty heated. In regards to
Yeah.
like what you can expect, because I think where we got in trouble in the Superdorf community is trying to give an expectation of size too early, right? Right now, Superdorfs are still popular, and we're still only 2 or 3 generations into making 87.5%. I think Eric Lee, it might be the only one who's 4 generations in at 93.75% Superdorf. And so you got to also realize that this is still relatively young. So I think what we did in the Superdorf community, and I'm speaking about we as in just the Superdorf community in general, is I think we kind of jumped the gun a little early and shot ourselves in the foot and started estimating size a little too early, because and Nathan might disagree with me or not, and if he does, I would love to hear his opinions. But when you have a super dwarf locality or dwarf locality, and then you have a mainland locality, and you're bringing them in, there's a word that I'm very fond of called genetic potential. And so, in any given clutch of any cross, there's genetic potential from both sides, right? So we think about humans, right? Like I can be 5'11", and my older brother is like 5'8", 5'8.5", right? But if you look at our parents, my dad is like 5'7.5", and my mom is like 5'6". There's no reason why I should be 5'11" and my older brother is 6 feet, right? But there's generations behind that cause that influence. Um,
Yep.
my grandfather was 6'2". So there's genetic potential. And so in any given clutch, you can have a very small animal being produced, and you can also have a larger animal that's produced within that given clutch, in my opinion.
And
Um,
that kind of comes down to more the bloodline thing that I more tend to believe in is, look at the size of parents, grandparents, if you can, and even beyond. And size potential is definitely factored in. I mean, you look at any family and it's the same thing, like you were saying. So,
yeah.
you know, parents are a good start, and generally, as a good rule of thumb, parents and grandparents are just a great baseline of what the animal could reach, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah. I personally don't like to give a size estimate, but if I have a customer who's coming up to me or a client that is coming up to me and they're asking me size potential and they won't take no for an answer. Like I give the like +2 -2 from parents to be safe. And what's crazy is that like that sounds crazy. I'm gonna give you a very wide range. I'm not gonna make it any more narrow than that. But I one thing that I think that is something we should discuss is like so right now the super dwarf standard is 50% super dwarf, right? So what
Yeah.
what
I
what
and
do
I think that's generally fair. In any bloodline, I would, wanna
yeah,
be 50% to start to claim. Like, I'm not gonna claim that I'm black if I have, 2.5% West African blood.
no, absolutely. Like 50% is so I'm going to play devil's advocate here with you. So, why is 50% the standard if it's 50% Superdorf and 50%, like I can also say it's 50% mainland. Can I not?
Oh, and yeah, you absolutely could.
So,
I I
I'm one of the people
I
who
think other factors are involved, especially when it comes to me. I don't think I'm ever gonna work with something that's just pure 50% super dwarf. It's always gonna have some dwarf blood mixed in and try to
right.
muddy that bloodline. There's gonna be generations of captive breeding into super dwarf projects before I buy an animal.
Right. No, I agree. And and the thing is like 50% Superdorf can still be 2, 3 generations in, but you just kept it at 50%. But if you continue to use smaller animals to produce those breedings, you can end up with a smaller animal on your third generation of 50%. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just like I'm one of the people who wants to push the industry forward, and I would like to see I want to see the industry standard for Superdorf be at 62.5 at a minimum because I still see a lot of 50 percenters getting up to the 12, 14 foot range. And I, I mean, this goes back to me just not liking the term Superdorf because, like, we're talking about super dwarf, and I want a small animal if I'm going to buy a Superdorf. And so, a 50
Yeah.
percenter who's 12 feet, that's a big snake.
And here's where I can serve this one back a little bit. My first project was done with technically a mainland animal, 25% Kalatoa, 25% Jampea.
Hmm.
He was probably about 5 foot.
How old?
Really skinny. He was probably 3 years old.
Okay.
I would need Joe Hole to really confirm this, and maybe we can edit in a little something on the bottom.
A little
I'll
blurb.
try to get the exact age on him when we bred him, but was definitely smaller than my 62.5% Phantom Tiger that I am breeding this year.
Yeah, yeah, and so that's again, this just goes to like how
And I don't know if I said Kalatoa, but he was 62.5% Kalatoa.
yeah. So this just goes to show the kind of murkiness that there can be within any given pairing and production of superdwarf animals. So my best
Or mainland animals, the same thing can be said because you can breed for size. You can be trying to be getting these giant animals by selectively taking
The
uh,
largest.
different yeah, the larger localities, like Bali, that kind of thing, and just shooting for that giant animal.
Yeah.
Um, but the same thing can be said for the other end of the spectrum, you know?
Yeah. So one thing that I want to get, and again, this is just something that I feel like I have to get off my chest because I am a locality. I consider myself a locality breeder as opposed to like a super dwarf breeder. Um, and one thing that people, so like in the super dwarf localities, we're talking about Madu, Karampa, Kalatoa. Um, you have these three localities that are known to stay smaller. And you need to also understand that there are a lot, in my opinion, and from my observation from what I've seen, there's a lot more 10-plus-year-old Kalatoas that are in the 9 to 10 foot range that are in the 7 to 8 foot range when it comes to females. I've a good example, I have a wild caught female. Eric Lee has a handful of 10-plus-year-old animals that are 9, 10 foot plus. Um, and so you know, age is a very important factor in regards to the size potential of the animal that you're possibly buying. Um, so keep in mind that pure super dwarfs, pure Kalatoas can still be in the 9 to 10 foot realm, even 11 foot realm for some of the TK line animals that are out there. Keep
Yeah,
that in mind.
I've seen bigger pures for sure than some of my crosses that I have at home. So that's
Yeah.
absolutely true.
Yeah. So, um, you know, it's one thing, there's people out there that will say over and over again that their 25% super dwarf stays smaller than pures. Don't
Very
buy it.
unlikely.
Don't buy it because if a pure super dwarf can still get in the 9 to 10 foot realm, how in the world does a 25% Kalatoa, 75% mainland? Again, mainland blood, big animals, right? Not monster 20 footers like we were talking about earlier, but still heavy bodied, bigger animals that get 15, 16 feet. Please, someone out there explain to me how we're only 3 generations in to this 25 percenter. Is this animal like 3 generations at most? Please tell me how that 25 percenter is going to stay smaller than a pure. If you can give me that information, please do. Like drop it in the comments, call me, like text me, but it's not likely. So if a breeder is telling you that they're 25% Kalatoa, 75% mainland is going to stay smaller than a pure, run in the other direction. Look for another breeder to buy from, please.
Yeah, and I
Nathan,
think
stop
when
laughing.
it comes down no, I think when it comes down to like when I'm talking to a potential customer, I just give them what I have. Size of parents, like so size of the animals I'm breeding, the age of the animals I'm breeding. That's extremely important because these animals aren't like to their full size potential. They're not 10 plus year animals. They're getting close. They're getting close to that 10-year mark, past the 5-year mark. So, uh, it's I always say there's a potential that these my animals can get bigger, and there's a potential that the animals that are produced can get bigger than what the female is, or what the male
Yeah,
is, or what
yeah,
have you.
yeah. Don't ever think that if you're buying an offspring off of someone that it'll stay the same size or smaller than the mom or dad. There's always a chance that it can get bigger. Again, my parents are both smaller than me and my older brother in terms of height. You got to look a little bit further than that if you really want a true realization of what you're going to be getting.
Yeah,
And
look back at our episodes like how to find a mentor or how to buy a super dwarf retic, and just look at some of our tips there. But I think the highlight for me is just like ask all the questions you can And if that breeder's not willing to answer those questions and give you as much information about the animal you're buying, steer away.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, one thing that I also want to just kind of talk about as well is just like if you're talking to someone and they're trying to guarantee you a size range, again, that's a red flag for me because we really don't know. Um,
No, I
in
think most people at this point have strayed away from that. I think they talk for the most part. I think if you're smart about this and realize what these animals are, the potential they have, just in terms of damage to an inexperienced keeper, I think you have to be as honest as possible
yeah,
right now.
yeah. And if it's okay with you, I want to kind of curtail and kind of change the discussion and talk about the dwarf localities.
Yeah, let's do
Um,
it.
so dwarf localities. So traditionally speaking, we have the Lesser Sunda or the Bonaire Islands, which are the seven islands that are located south of Sulawesi that have been identified as super dwarfs and dwarfs, right? Again, just to make everyone fully aware, super dwarf and dwarf is a marketing term. There is nothing scientific about it. Retics do not display true dwarfism. They don't. Dwarfism is a mutation, whereas what we're seeing is evolution based off of animals that were separated living on smaller islands. So they're not correct terms. They're marketing terms, which hopefully
It's the island effect. You see it with lizards. I mean, look at the Komodo Islands.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
all you need. It's the island effect with animals. You are
yeah,
either going to have the effect of the animal needing to be smaller to survive or larger to survive.
right. Exactly. And so, just real quick, we're talking about the longest species of snake in the world, right? And now we've coined these terms superdwarf and dwarf. And at the end of the day, they are still large constrictors. An 8-foot snake is still not a small snake. But I also want to touch on the subject, and this is going off topic about what I was going to hit with the dwarfs. But again, just want to talk about it. Um, an 8-foot super dwarf versus an 8-foot mainland. Wait, maybe I already talked about this. The size difference of those two when it comes to weight. Like I think one thing that we
You,
get
you have,
obsessed.
but
Yeah, but I'm gonna say one more comment. This we can make this Lucas's first rant of 2023. Um, one thing that
still don't have the overlay for it, but we'll get it.
exactly. But one thing that like people get so caught up on is length, right? Length, 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 length. How long is my snake? A 10-foot snake
Hey,
is
some people are girth people. Don't.
what?
I mean,
Oh,
not
geez.
everyone gets caught up in length, Lucas.
Exactly. Okay. Fair enough. So in the Superdorf community, we say like how long or how like size is measured based on length. But like I can guarantee you, if I'm not a big dude. I'm 5'11". I hate you.
I can't take any of this shit seriously. I'm sorry. Oh,
Okay. So stature
listen
wise,
to it back. You'll laugh too.
no, I clearly see what you're going with. Height wise, I'm 5'11". My I'm not a massive dude. I'm not a Chad Harsh who we just interviewed, who's 6 foot plus and a big dude, and I can still hold a 7.5, 8-foot retic in one hand, right? Like I can still have it coiled around my hand, going up on my forearm, and still hold the 7, 8-foot retic, right? A Superdorf retic. So I want just to be very clear in the sense of like 8 foot to people sounds very big because it's longer than you are tall, but it's still a super manageable size. Like weight means a lot. Um, I took an animal to the vet not too long ago who's 7.5 to 8 feet, and weighed only 8 pounds. 8 pounds. You're curling more at the gym. Like you're holding a
Yeah.
dumbbell. Like even for you, for you
Do you have any weight comparisons with any of your mainland animals?
um, I would probably venture to say that my 14 or 15 month old mainland right now that's 6 foot is probably over 10 pounds, and that's just going by weight of what I feel in my hand. He definitely feels like a heavier snake. But nothing that's like anecdotal. I haven't like taken measurements or anything. The only time I weigh my
Yeah.
snakes is if I have to take them to the vet. I know there's people that are super like I weigh. There's a lot of ball python keepers that are starting to keep super dwarfs and they weigh their retics every other week. I don't do that. I don't have enough time on my hands to.
Yeah. I don't either, even though my personal scale is in my retic room. So like, I mean, my first routine in the morning, take a dump, go into the retic room, check on the snakes, and then see where I'm at. But no, I'm not weighing my animals, but I have in the past just around breeding, just to get an idea of like, you know, what these animals are, so I can, talk to people about what I'm dealing with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And my 75% animals, 75% Calitoa, 12.5% Jampea. Um, the purple, she's probably, I think when I first bred her, she was like 14 pounds, something like that, full of eggs, close to 20.
Yeah.
And then I think now, a couple years later, she's sitting around 16 pounds, something like that, super manageable.
Okay.
The
Is that deuce
sister
loaded
who's,
or unloaded?
huh?
Is
Oh,
that
unloaded.
okay?
Unloaded, yeah, for sure. She's probably 18 to 20 pounds loaded up. Um, and then uh, her her sister from a different breeding, she's also a year younger. She's a little bit bigger. So the purple's about 9.25 foot, if I were to guess, and then the anery is about 9.5, maybe pushing 10. We'll see.
Okay.
Um, I would venture to say she's 20 pounds, 25 full.
Okay. Um. So yeah, I mean, for me, yeah, I'm not even gonna pretend to say that I
Well, not
know.
even that can even show a tiny bit of variability in bloodline. She's same bloodline, different breeding, but also just a slight bit bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, again, a good point in terms of just variety and difference even within a given bloodline. But anyways, I want to hop back into the dwarf stuff. So the reason why I was going on my tangent on this super dwarf and dwarf um, conversation about marketing terms is because we still talk about Jampea and Salayers as dwarfs, right? And I am also just I'm going to be fully um, again my thought here Ternate Islands, ternates, they are dwarfs. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't say that, but we have 11 wild caught animals in this country, with the biggest one being about 14 foot at the most. Um, excuse me.
I
Still,
see a lot of them being smaller than some of the Jampea and Solaire animals that I
that's
see. I
that's what
see
I'm
some of those
saying,
animals get really big. Like I would
dude.
never consider a Jampea or a pure
Right.
Solaire just because I know their size potential.
And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Like Salayers are considered dwarf. There are multiple 15-foot Salayers out there that are 40, 50 pounds. And we're talking about using the term dwarf. So again, like for those of you new in the industry, just because you buy a dwarf animal does not mean you're getting a small animal like a Slayer, a quote unquote true dwarf. Um, it's still like I have a 14-foot Slayer in my snake garage right now that is actually very, very lean compared to all of her siblings, compared to all the other related animals to her. As a matter of fact, Chris McVicker has an animal that's a sibling of her that is massive compared to my animal, and she is still 14 foot. So I got her from Reach Out Reptiles. He did a video like 3 years ago weighing his animals, and I'm pretty sure she was like 34 pounds and 13 foot 11 inches, right? And we're calling these animals dwarfs. So again, when you're buying a dwarf, just understand what you're getting into. I just felt the need to go on this rant about like just make sure that you are aware of the actual locality span and size. Like, for example, Reach Out Reptiles produced a pure Jampea clutch not too long ago with wild caught Jampeas that are really small. I'm sure those animals will stay smaller than most Jampeas. But also, you look at Gaspar line Jampeas, some of them have gotten to 14 feet, to 15 feet. I think there's rumors, can't confirm this. Actually, posted a picture of a Jampea that he had, I don't know for how long, next to a gallon jug. That the snake was almost bigger round than the gallon jug and was about 16 feet as a Jampea. So Gaspar line Jamps are known to get big. They get 13, 14, 15 feet and they're heavier bodied animals and they look almost like a Kalatoa. So, you know, keep in mind about like the dwarf localities, you're not getting a small snake. You're not. And again, just to confirm my rant, if a Solaire can be 15 feet and be considered a dwarf, if a Gempea can be considered 15 feet and be considered a dwarf, Ternates that we haven't seen a single one in the US and the people that I've talked to in Indonesia because I'm weird like that and I reach out to people in Indonesia and talk to them a lot about locality animals have not seen Ternate Island 15 or at 15 feet. In my opinion, they're a quote unquote marketing term dwarf. In my opinion, we have small, medium, and large localities, right? We have Sulawesi's, large localities, Java's, large localities, Borneo's, large localities. Then we have our mediums, the Ternates, the Jampeas, the Slayers, and then we have our smalls, the Kalatoa, the Madus, the Karampas. So just keep that in mind when we're talking about size.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the end, size matters.
Yeah. Um, so
I mean, let me add a little caveat to that, especially with the dwarf, super dwarf stuff. So, a little context with me, like if I were new in this industry, coming to get my first dwarf retic and not really knowing much, kind of putting myself back in the shoes of myself 6 7 years ago, maybe 8 when I first started hearing about these animals. um if I heard dwarf and thought that these animals could stay, you know 20 30 pounds, given the position I'm in, I'm 40% disabled right now. My spine surgeon doesn't want me lifting more than 60 pounds. So if I get an animal that exceeds that, or even, 30, 40 pounds, but that animal is hard to work with, that's
yeah,
going to give me a lot of medical issues that I
yeah,
don't want to deal with.
30,
So
30
size is
pounds.
extremely important.
Yeah, 30 pounds dead
And
weight
and
is
you
one
and you
thing.
don't know what your potential customers are dealing with. They could be someone like me that has, real limitations with what they can work with. Not everyone has that, and that's great. But I mean,
Yeah,
when you're dealing with someone who really needs something to be smaller because they think it's going to be, then, it's just really important to know what you're buying.
yeah. And it's one thing to have a 30-pound dead weight animal, but it's another thing to have a 30-pound animal that's moving against you. And oh, there goes
Yeah,
my light again.
this isn't a 30-pound puppy. This is a 30-pound snake.
Yeah, that really genuinely, a lot of them are great to handle, but they move and
Yeah.
they're gonna be moving
Even a
away from you.
well-mannered snake, when it's moving and exploring, it's a lot to handle. It's a little workout.
Yeah,
It's
even
fun, but, like, I wanna make sure that I can handle what's in my house. I don't wanna have to think about, "Oh, where am I gonna get rid of this animal that I can't keep?"
yeah. When are you gonna come over and see the collection?
Hopefully soon, but, I mean, we'll just see how, financially responsible I am over these next couple months.
We should do a live episode in my garage.
I mean, we should do a live episode whenever you can come out here too.
No, I agree. Um, But yeah, I mean, there's a lot on the topic that we could talk about, and we could probably go for hours and hours. But I guess one point that I kind of want to sum up in regards to is like, as a new buyer, if someone's giving you a definitive size range, don't necessarily buy into it. Don't think that they're just scamming you, because that might not be the truth. That might not be the case either. But there's potential that your snake can go above or below that size range. Anytime that you are mixing mainland blood into the situation, the genetic potential, the GP, right? There's always the potential that the snake can be bigger than what that breeder is suggesting. And again, that breeder might not be intentionally misleading you, or some breeders are intentionally misleading people, aka 25% super dwarf staying smaller than pures. Um, but at the end of the day, um, just be informed, get as much information as we continue to talk about over and over in all of our episodes. Get grandparents' information, go as far back as you can to get size range and age. Age is such an important variable in this entire conversation. Um, Nathan, you have anything else to add to kind of sum up to regard size potential of these animals?
No, I think my last little rant was kind of what I wanted to sum up with. So
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited for people to hear this and share their thoughts with us on our experiences through the years keeping these animals, and maybe we get some extra input from people who have extra experience. I'm ready to just get some opinions and see what people think.
Yeah.
Um, Otherwise, I just want to say, remember, we have a great Patreon community. We talked about it at the top of the episode. Awesome Discord community where people are active all day, all night. Uh, so, yeah, just jump on over there, become a part of the lounge, and we'll see you next week.
All right. You guys take care. Thanks for listening and enjoy it.